Monday, December 19th, is the first Monday after the second Wednesday of December. Why the heck does that make any difference? Well, it's because that's the day on which the Constitution of the United States says the electors selected at the November 8th election get together in the various state capitals around the country to cast their ballots for president. And so on Monday, 306 electors pledged to Donald Trump will cast their ballots around the country to formally elect him as president of the United States. Because 2016 was an unusual election where Hillary Clinton won the popular vote but failed to win the electoral vote, there are some on the left side of the aisle that believe that they can convince a large number of electors to defect from Donald Trump on Monday, thus denying him the presidency. Their so-called Russian hacking stuff has added to their equation and ramped up their efforts, including thousands of emails and letters and phone calls to electors to try to get them to change their minds. There have been 5 times in American history when the presidency was won by a candidate who didn't carry the popular vote. The first being in 1824, one of the weirdest elections in American history. The only one which was actually decided in the House of Representatives. And the only one where the candidate who won both the popular vote and the electoral vote didn't get the presidency. That's because Andrew Jackson, who carried both, failed to get a majority of the electoral votes, even though he had more than Adams, thus casting it into the House of Representatives. 1824 was also the first year in which they even counted the popular vote. Fast forward 50 years to 1876, the so-called centennial election, the closest electoral election in American history, where Rutherford B. Hayes took the presidency by a single electoral vote after a deal was made in Congress, giving him 20 previously contested electors. In 1888, Benjamin Harrison bested Grover Cleveland despite failing to win the popular vote. Cleveland came back 4 years later to beat Harrison, thus bookending the presidency for the only time in our history where somebody served 2 non-consecutive terms. It was then more than a century before we got to 2000 and the famous Bush-Gore contest ultimately decided in the Supreme Court. The difference in 2016 was the magnitude of Hillary Clinton's popular vote win, roughly 2.5 million votes. By contrast, in 1824, it was only 35,000. And the Bush-Gore election, which eclipsed all the others by quite a margin, was only 500,000. But the concept that there's actually going to be whole-scale defections among the Trump electors is roughly equivalent to winning Powerball 3 or 4 times. It just isn't going to happen. Because while there have been a few so-called faithless electors through the years, they've been few and far between. 99.99% of the time, the electors have done what they were supposed to do. In 2004, for example, a Democratic elector in Minnesota, cast his vote for John Edwards rather than John Kerry. Some thought that was just an honest mistake. In 1988, one of the Democrats in West Virginia reversed the order as some sort of protest. And in 1976, Ronald Reagan actually got one of the Gerald Ford electors. You have to go all the way back to 1968, when a North Carolina Nixon elector cast his ballot for George Wallace, somebody outside of his party. But even then, he said if it had been decisive, he'd have voted for Nixon. So although there have been some hiccups along the way, they've been few and far between. The first and kind of most interesting one in 1820, where an elector refused to cast his vote, making it a majority because he believed, or a unanimous vote, because he believed that the only unanimous vote should have been for George Washington. So when the Electoral College meets on Monday, they're going to faithfully do what they've done through all these years. And when the votes are open on January 6th, Donald Trump will be declared the winner of the presidency and Mike Pence the winner of the vice presidency. And that's a longish best 60 seconds of your week.